wanted to make a follow-up to my whole modern art video because based on the comments that I got, and really I tried my best to read all of my comments and um, respond to what people are saying, if not necessarily specific people, then just sort of the um, general comments that I get from people. And if there's something that's a reoccurring thing, then I try and pick up on that, and I try my best to interact with my audience instead of just talking for talking's sake. So I think that a lot of people sort of missed the rhetorical nature of my question, why is this in a museum, and answered me in a sort of literal fashion. But that that in and of itself got me to really reflect on what it is that, and hone in on exactly what it is that I have a problem with this whole bar stool, wheel in the bar stool thing. So people told me that it was by this guy, Dunclamp, I think was his name. I'm just going to go with that because I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. Anyway, he pushed the boundaries of what art is, according to what people were telling me. And this is not the original version of the work. He made an original version that was lost or destroyed during World War II or something like that. Years later, he created a replica. Now this has to do with sort of the industrial production nature of art or something like that. And the fact that he made a replica shows that it's just as valid as the original. Now therein to me lies part of the problem. If his replica is just as valid as his original version, then if I were to make the exact same thing, why would my version not be just as valid as his, just as worthy of being in the Museum of Modern Art? You see, when you have any sort of value system, and things are being put in a museum on the basis of some sort of value judgment one way or the other. So they've gotten rid of the value judgment of things like technical merit and aesthetic appreciation and these sorts of things. But value judgments, given the fact that we still have things like museums, are still in place. Yes, we can consider just about anything art, but that's sort of the hypocrisy of modern art. On one hand, they're saying, okay, we're gonna thumb our noses in the faces of all these gatekeepers telling us what art is. Now, in reality, there were probably countless people before this guy who were making things that the art community did not consider art. It just so happened that he arose at the right time and place and knew the right people and sold the right story to get people to go, oh, he's pushing the boundaries of art, and we're going to accept him. And so the value judgment has shifted from what constitutes art, what constitutes technical merit, artistic merit, aesthetic merit, and these sorts of things, to a sort of cult of personality, to they did it first, to things like that. Things that I think are sort of self-defeating, because if anything constitutes art, then the reason that it's in a museum is reasons that I think are bad ones. I would like to know who is going to come out here and defend the premise that, well, he deserves to be in a museum and get all this recognition and be in books and be talked about and be discussed and get all this recognition because he did it first. Because he was connected with the right establishment people. He fits in, his work fits into the narrative portrayed by the gatekeepers, and there still are gatekeepers. Who is saying what's art, who's saying what has merit, who's saying what has historical value in the history of art. There still are these gatekeepers. He fits in with their narrative, so he gets the recognition. How many people really want to get up here and defend that as the valid mode of how we understand art, or what art is, what constitutes good art, what we put in a museum? I really don't think that this is all that relevant of a work anymore. In its time and place, this work might have had more relevance than what is apparent when it's just sort of left in some corner of a museum by a stairwell, sort of disconnected from everything else. When you have, and that's part of the issue with conceptual art, is that context affects the way that you perceive it, and therefore affects the concept of the art. Once you have moved something into a museum, or if you have an installation that's entirely meant to be in a museum setting, then you have changed the context, and therefore you have changed the concept behind the art. So if I were to walk out in the Museum of Modern Art, onto the streets of Manhattan and say, okay, this trash can is now a work of art. If they were to somehow, remove that trash can from the street and put it, move it a block inside the Museum of Modern Art, its concept as concept art has now changed, because it's not on the filthy, grimy, noisy, smells like urine streets of Manhattan anymore. Now it's inside the fresh, clean, relatively quiet walls of the Museum of Modern Art. You have changed the context, and now you have changed the concept of the art. There still are gatekeepers, and the value judgments have just changed from things that I'm much more willing to get behind, like technical merit or artistic, aesthetic appreciation, into a sort of cult of personality and historical happenstance of this person did it first. But the fact that there are still gatekeepers sort of creates this internal hypocrisy within modern art. Like, please, for the love of Christ, do not tell me how avant-garde you are once you have become the establishment, and once you are now creating the narrative of the history of art in what constitutes landmark art. Like, if you're the gatekeeper, don't or you're in with the gatekeepers, don't sit there and try and pretend that you're so cutting edge, and that you're this, that, and the other thing, and blah 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 blah. I mean, I know lots of people who are out there creating art that isn't getting recognition. I have friends that are incredibly talented painters and making all these weird things, and friends that are into things like graffiti and all these things. And to me, the fact that nobody knows who they are is totally irrelevant to me. Understanding the context helps, but I just sort of look at it and can appreciate it, try and appreciate it for what it is, instead of trying to be sold this narrative about how important it is, and yet at the same time this narrative involves how it defied the very gatekeepers that are now telling us how important it is, on this totally different value system that I think few people would actually want to get behind and defend as the real or as a really good way of judging art. I don't think that historical happenstance and these sorts of things are good methods of gauging what constitutes good art. And that was sort of the rhetorical nature of my question of why is this in a museum that I think was lost on quite a few people. And so hopefully this video has helped sort of further clarify my problem with a lot of these sort of modern art works. I don't have a problem if you appreciate these works, but I do have a problem with this internal hypocrisy in modern art, which I see. Now, if you disagree with me, I'd love to hear from you. Again, I do try and actually listen to what other people are saying, and I sort of get irritated when people think, oh, you're so close-minded, you're so close-minded. If you have an opinion that disagrees with me, say so, but actually don't just tell me how close-minded I am. Cite specifics. That's it. Have a nice day.